Some people ask, how do you make a gnome? Well, I'll show you. This is a Jack Sparrow gnome. I really like gnomes. I'm not sure what they are, but they always have a beard and a big nose, and you never see their eyes. But they're always Christmassy, and I love Santa, and I love Christmas. But I started thinking you can make gnomes that are all different kinds of themes, and this is just one of the themes that I thought of after about 30 different gnomes that I made, and I thought I could show how to make one. They're actually pretty easy. The base of them, as you can see, is just a tube, and we'll set him down in a second, but he's got little doodads on his hat, and I give each one a little something on the top. This one's got a little steering wheel for a boat. And you start each one with a tube. I use these nice thick tubes. They are not from toilet paper, but if you have toilet paper tubes or paper towel, that works fine too. You can even take some regular old cardstock and just roll it up and tape it if that's all you have. That works too. It's just as sturdy, but you need some sort of a base. I like these tubes because they're heavy and they're solid, but whatever you have that works, that's what you start with. I have different sizes. I got tall ones and I've got some shorter ones. I like a short squatty gnome, but if you're going to make a whole bunch of them, sometimes it's nice to have different heights so they can all sort of line up together and look unique. But we'll start with the short one for this one, and I'll show how I assemble it. First of all, my little workstation here is this silicone mat. They're actually used for baking in the oven because they're heat safe. I use them here on my little workstation because I do a lot with the hot glue gun, and if you drip hot glue on these silicone mats, it peels right up. So I like using these because it keeps the counter safe and doesn't ruin anything. And you drip a lot when you're using the glue gun, so kind of protects your workstation here. But also it has little tick marks and some measurements on the side that you can use to map things out, so sometimes that's nice to have too. It's pretty handy. So I'll show you what I start with. I have a lot of supplies already, but I kind of thought about what do I have a lot of that I can use to make these gnomes, and I have a lot of felt scraps, and you could use fabric or felt scraps, but you want something to cover up this paper on the tube. I find that they don't paint very well, so if you try to use just some acrylic paint to cover them, it takes several coats, and it gets annoying because this is such a dark color to try to go over that it just makes better sense to use a fabric, and that's why I use a glue gun, because I can just glue the fabric right on. So when I measure this, I don't do anything technical. I just sort of lay the tube down, and I line up the bottom of the tube with the bottom of the felt, and I just roll it along, and I hold it in place with my hand to see, okay, I need to cut it right about there. I'd like a little bit of overlap so I know I'm covering the whole paper, so I just cut right up that line there with some good scissors. You need really good scissors if you're going to be using felt, because felt is so thick it's hard to cut through, and so you don't want to use just your regular paper scissors. Then I just cut along the top here roughly. I don't have to make it perfect, and since I made so many of these, I really don't care at this point. I just kind of go with it, and I can always patch it up later if I need to. You put so much on top of them that if you mess up or if you have a little bit of cardboard showing, that's really no big deal. But then I hold it in place where I need it, so I make sure my bottom is lined up again. I hold it in place. I'm just going to put a line of glue right along here where I want it. You have to work fast with the hot glue because it will start to set fairly quick. So if you do your line of glue and then walk over and do something else and come back to it, your glue is going to be set and you're not going to be able to stick it to anything. So you just do that line of glue nice and thick and then hold it in place. Some people like to use a little popsicle stick or something because they don't want to burn themselves while they're holding onto the glue part where it's hot. My fingers are kind of immune to it by now, so if you have tough enough fingers or not going to bother you, you can just hold on to it right there. But a glue gun is not as scary as a lot of people think it is. I let kids use this one all the time. It's really no big deal. It doesn't get all that hot. The small ones are usually low temp anyways, these little mini guns, so I use these for everything. They do well enough, and I never really need it to get any hotter. So then I just kind of hold it until it sets. It only takes a second, and then you can let go. So that'll be my base. I don't really think too much about the colors. I do them all different colors. So on this one, I wanted my Jack Sparrow gnome to have a different color hats. So this one's got the gray hat, and I'm going to do a brown hat. I don't actually know what color Jack Sparrow's hat is, so I'm just going to do brown. I've got this brown color felt that I'm going to use for his hat. So the first few gnomes I made, I actually didn't give them a floppy hat with a brim. I just gave them a pointy hat because it seemed like a lot of gnomes that I'd seen before just had the pointy hat. They didn't really have a brim. But when I made one with the brim, I thought it was just so cute I had to make more. So now when I make them, I always give them a nice big brim, but that comes later. Getting ahead of myself. He needs hair, so at this point I need to give him hair, and I try to put the beard on this place here where I made the seam because I want to cover that. So the hair is kind of the fun part, and it's also kind of the frustrating part. When I did this with the kids, they didn't really like pulling the yarn apart, but that's what makes the beard soft and fluffy. You don't have to. You can just use plain old strings of yarn just as they are, but actually most yarn is twisted up and it's 3 or 4 strands worth. So if you just untwist it, which is just twisting the opposite way, you can loosen it up enough to sort of separate all of those strands and pull them apart. And it makes for a nicer, fluffier beard. As you can see on this Jack Sparrow, all of his little hairs are pulled apart, so you don't have whole pieces of yarn. Although I think it would have looked fine if we did kind of use the whole yarn as is without separating them, but I think it gives it a little more of a realistic, a little more character. It gives it some curls, and I like it like that. So I already got some separated. This Jack Sparrow, he was all black hair. On this one, I want it to be more like a kind of a gray look, so I've got some grays and some black hairs mixed in, and I'm just going to finish up my black hairs that I've got here, so I'll go ahead and separate those now. If you get it in the middle, pretty easy to just pull them apart. I just make a pile, and then I'll put them all together later on. I have to line up all my ends. Sometimes teamwork is nice if you're doing this. Let somebody else line up your yarn for you while you're doing this, and you can knock them out real quick. You can use any color yarn you like. I like to use the natural color look on mine, so when I'm thinking about what color beard I want them to have, I've been doing mostly natural color beards, so you know, a lot of white hair like this one here, like a real Santa look, you know. I've been doing some grays, so they kind of have that old man look. I've been doing some like tan colors, blonde color, something natural, you know, that looks like hair. But yeah, you can make some fun ones too that have some kind of a wild looking hair. My sister suggested rainbow hair on one. I thought, well, maybe. Wasn't sure how I felt about that. But right now you can just see what I'm doing here. I'm just putting all my ends together. I'm just kind of gathering them up, like if you're about to do a braid, sort of kind of gathering all your hairs up. You can braid these. If you do, just knot one end, maybe tape it down to something with some real good packing tape, or have somebody hold the end of it and you can braid these. That is quite all right. Got 2 more after this, and I just want to mix these in. I don't want there to be a whole bunch of grays on one side and all black hair on the other side. So I'm just gonna lay all these hairs together and just sort of spread them out so they mix naturally, and so I can't really tell what's what, and it won't look like I just stuck those on there. All right, that's a pretty full beard. I like that, and I also like that I've got some stray ends, so you know, you can pick which side you want to be the bottom of the beard and which part is going to be the top, which is unseen. But before you do, I want to put some beads in his hair. Actually, the pirate gnome, the Jack Sparrow gnome, is the only gnome that I put anything in his hair, little accessories, just because I wanted to give him those little wooden beads in there. Couldn't think of anything that would really go with my Christmas gnomes, but this was just a kind of a signature look. Without these, I don't know that he would really look like Jack Sparrow, so I had to give him some of these little guys in there. So I pick out some little beads that I want to use. So I've got little wooden beads. I like to have a lot of odds and ends near me that I can just say, oh, okay, I'll use that on my next gnome, or kind of find some things that you've had laying around and say, what can I do with this? And maybe you can stick it onto your gnome somewhere. I'm going to grab a needle so that I can feed these beads on here. The yarn frays really badly, so if you try to stick it through the bead, it's going to frustrate you to no end, so you want to use a needle. And here's a cool little thing that I use whenever I'm sewing, especially when you're doing stuff with the kids, because you don't want needles getting lost. That makes me really nervous to think about a needle falling on the floor and we don't know where it went, especially if you're working on a carpet. So this is a nifty little thing. It's a needle pad. It's magnet on the back. You could really use any magnet. This just came with a sewing kit, so it says Singer on there. But it's just a place to sort of leave your needles so that you don't leave them lying around. You can find them easily because they should always be on the needle pad when they're not in use. And I like to pick out my best needles and keep them on here all the time so I don't go fishing through a whole bunch of needles that are too dull for certain projects. I know these are always good needles. These are going to be sharp enough or big enough eye to do what I want. I know I need a large enough eye that I can sort of twist the end of that yarn and get it through. So I'm going to use this one. And it's thin enough where it's not going to get stuck going through a bead. Think about that too, because some of these needles are a little thicker. And you don't want them getting stuck as the eye is trying to pass through the bead. So I like how those needles just snap right onto the magnet board and it keeps them secure. Sometimes you can still manage to lose one, but at least it makes it a little bit harder. All right, so I just get it through the needle just a little bit, hold it in place, slide on a couple of beads. I'll do the pink one and the yellow. Slide it right over and let it pass past the point of the end. And then I'm not going to knot it, actually, for this, because I've got my glue gun handy, and it's a really good tool to have. I'm just going to squeeze a little hot glue right there. And sort of let it stick onto the bead. You know, I think I'm out of glue in the back. I also like to have extra glue sticks nearby, because with the mini glue guns, one thing that I don't like about them is that you run out of glue faster because the glue sticks are smaller. So I leave a little jar of glue sticks nearby, and I get all my hot glue sticks at the dollar store because you get 20 of them, these little mini glue sticks for $1, and you can't beat that. So I just put a little glue there at the end. I'm gonna let it set. You can blow on it if you're trying to speed it up, but it sets pretty fast. And then just let it hang and set it aside. So that'll be our first little strand of hair. So we'll set that aside. I don't want to do too many. On this one I did, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strands in the front that had the beads. So I'll stick to something like that. But I just, again, want to use the beads that I pulled out. So we'll just use these beads. And when we've used them up, then that'll be it. Okay. So now I have 4 strands of hair that will hang in the front that have beads. You don't want these getting lost. So if you want to purposefully stick them up front when you go to glue it, it's a good idea to do that. All right. So now I'll gather up all my hairs. And I'll position the beads in the front because I want these to show. All right. And I kind of twist them, gather them up at the top, and take one of these non-separated pieces of yarn because I'm going to do a knot at the top. I just want to sort of lay this down, crisscross it like that, and knot it so that it keeps all these hairs together. The yarn knots pretty easily unless you're using kind of a silky, very smooth yarn. It should knot very easily. So then you just tie it together, and this gives us a way to easily glue it in. Now you don't have to worry about trimming all this extra at the top, but you can if you like. I won't, because I don't want to make a big mess. I'll have all these little pieces of yarn that'll go everywhere, and I don't want to deal with that. But the idea is that you're going to sort of lay it here and push this extra hair inside the tube so it hides and holds it in place nicely, and you'll have to kind of grip it for a few seconds to let that glue set, and I'll show you how all that works. So first of all, I take some glue, how to put a lot of it up here where I need it to stay. You kind of put a little more down low. Glue stick is giving me trouble. All right, give it a little more down below because I want to hide this part here where I didn't quite cover the cardboard. Put a little bit inside where your knot's going to go, and lay it right on top of that glue. If you have one of those silicone baking mitts that people use to take hot stuff out of the oven, you can definitely use that to hold this in place if you're afraid a little bit of glue is going to slip through and burn you. Alright, so everything is now in place. If you like that you've got some long pieces hanging down, it's kind of cute and looks more realistic. So you can just leave those just the way they are. Alright, now before we put the hat or make the hat, you give him a nose. I have a whole bunch of these little wooden beads, and I think they actually look like noses because they have a hole in the middle because they're beads, but the hole almost makes it look like little nostrils on the sides. So every time I place a nose, I'm careful to put it where these holes, aka nostrils, are on the sides where a real nose would have them. So I'll pick my skin tone here. I think I'll use this one for the nose. And you kind of want to put it right here in the front. You don't want to put it on the top. You don't want to put it anywhere where it's going to hide. You want to put it right in the front. So let's put it a little bit lower than the top of the tube. You can see where that is. There's the top of the tube, and my nose is going a little lower. I'm just going to squeeze some glue right there, pile it on, and then hold your nose in place until it sets. Count to 5. And he's done. All right, it's almost there. All he needs now is a hat and then some little decoratives on there so we can dress him up. All right, so the hat. The hat can't really be explained without showing it, so I will just show it. Sort of talk about what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So I take some felt. Kind of want it to be almost like a 4, maybe 5 by 5 inch square to start. And that'll be the brim. So I'll just imagine this is about 5 here. You can always use a square to make the brim and then trim it up later. And I think that might be the best idea for this guy. So I will squeeze some glue along this part right here, all around. Put a little glue here on top of the nose, and keep continuing around. And then I will hold this in place, kind of cupping it with my hand until it sets. Then I can let it go. So you put a little glue on the nose so that way it'll rest on the nose nicely when you put the hat on. So you gotta do this fast. So like I said, your glue will set before you're ready. You don't want to run out of glue for this, so have your glue sticks handy, because if you run out, you might lose some of that glue that you put down, because it'll be cool before you can get to it. I'm just holding it down, kind of cupping it in my hand to hold all parts of it down until it's set. Sometimes because the felt is being forced to curl up in a way it doesn't want to, it'll almost want to open back up. So you don't want to let it go too soon, because it might just flatten itself back out peel up. So hold it down real good. And then once you feel that heat starting to leave your hand and it gets a little cooler, you can lift up your hand, and now you have something like this. Inside we see his nose in there, but we're not going to worry about trimming this up just yet. Now we're going to make the top part, and you can use a small scrap to make the top part of the hat. It's kind of twisted and curved a little bit, so it doesn't need to be like a perfect cone shape. It can be, you start with something like your scraps that you have. You can even extend your scraps if you want to make it a little longer. You can always cut an extra piece, put some glue along this edge, glue it together, and make a larger piece of felt. You can't even tell once it's all put together. So this is another part that's hard to explain but easy to show. You sort of want to roll it up and imagine that the bottom part of the cone is wider than the top, of course, and that's what makes it a cone. So I sort of overlap here, like I'm going to glue it around, but I don't want to roll it up like I'm making a tube like this. I want to roll it and then twist it a little bit. So I've got this sort of thing going on in the back. So if I hold it in place, you can see it's wider here. So right about here, I'll put some glue. And then I'm going to just hold it in place so it can sort of start to form the cone. All right. Okay, so now, depending on how kooky you want your hat to be, you might want it to have some twists and turns, and you might want it to look a little silly. So you might decide to, just opening this up a little bit, you might decide you want yours to look a little different. But I think I'm going to have mine with a few crimps in it. So I might just sort of force it the way I want it to go, and you decide where you need to place your glue based on how you want it to twist. So I sort of want mine to do this at the top, so I'm going to pinch it here with some glue right there. This part is where it gets kind of up to you. You're deciding how you want yours to look, so hard to say exactly how to do this. This is what makes them fun, because they're all unique. At the same time, because I want it to wrinkle here, to force that to wrinkle, I have to put a little glue in there and then just hold the whole thing together until it sets. All right. And then because I want the top to be more like a point, I'll kind of twist the top a little bit and then wrap this around some more and make it more pointed at the top. You just have to glue it in place so it stays where I want it. Because I want this to lay right, I'm going to help it out by cutting a few slits, maybe about 1 inch apart, just small little slits here, and that will help it fan out and lay like I want it to. So flip it over. On these little tabbies that I just created, I'm going to put some glue. So glue there. Move fast with the glue or it will dry on you. Put a little bit up there too, and then while you've got it in position, just stick it right on his head. All right, and help it out by holding it down where you want it. Don't be afraid to use a lot of glue. With these kind of things, you want them to be secure, so you don't want to be skimpy with the glue, especially after I talked about how cheap this stuff is. Remember, 20 of these for $1, so you can use as much glue as you need at that price. So hold that down, pull your strings off while you're waiting for it to set. It's something you can do. And now, of course, we need this to look more like a pirate hat, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, a pirate hat usually has it's like a triangle shape. It's got 3 corners, and that's what sets it apart from you don't want it to look like a cowboy hat, which looks a little different. A cowboy hat sort of has the sides peeled up, but the pirate hat is almost like a 3-corner hat. So we will make his point for sure right above his nose, because that's the angle they wear it. So from above, this is what you see, his nose is here. I'm going to kind of force this to do that, force this side to do that, and we'll have our triangle 3-corner hat. 1, 2, 3-corner hat. But we have to force it, and then we have to cut it and trim it up so it looks the way we want it to. So you can just put a little glue right in this little crevice here above his nose and hold it in place, pinch it until you get that nice corner that you're looking for. We're going to do the same thing on this corner right here. So we have to find where the corner is going to be. Maybe we could put a little glue right along that edge there and then just fold it upward. Hold it down. If you're fast enough, you can get both of these done and hold them both down at the same time. I'll just put, again, some glue along the crack here. And then hold that down. Alright, so the last one, I just put some glue along this line and then hold this up. It does look a little different from my first Jack Sparrow gnome because I was kind of experimenting with the hat. So this one will be a little more of a crisp cornered hat. Alright, so from above you can see that this is definitely a triangle and we need to trim it unless you like it like that. I mean, it is supposed to be unique and a, you know, kind of a roughly done thing, but I will trim it up just a bit. I don't want this corner to stick up quite so much. So if you decide you want his hat to bend or twist, you can always do that. You can bend it a little bit, put some glue, hold it down. Let's do that because that makes it look kind of special and do that. So we will figure out where does it bend and then glue it in place. So I think I'll do it right there. Wants to bend there, so we'll let it do that. And now his hat is going to the sides, so I like those. All he really needs now is a little doodad on his hat to give him that pirate look, and then a little something on the top here. So my other one I just have a lot of these little glass bottles that have corks, and so I opened it up. It actually works like a regular bottle, so you can open it up, and I rolled up a little piece of brown paper to make it look like maybe a treasure map or message in a bottle, and then put some sand and shells in there so that I can move around. It just gives it a little something extra. I put a little feather, and then of course the steering wheel up here. But on this one, I do want to do a feather. I got this nice red feather. And this one I'm going to do a plastic gold coin. Dollar store. Feathers too. Oh yeah, I had this, these are just the little straws. They make them for drinks. You can make a little stir or something, I guess, for a drink. But I have a whole box of them for crafty purposes. And they're black, of course, but I just used a gold paint pen to color it. And I didn't want to color it solid. I just wanted it to look kind of rough, so I didn't get all the edges perfectly. As you can see, I just kind of roughed it up and put a little shine on there to make it look like a kind of an antique look. So I might even put this in his hat. Let's do a coin on the top of this one's hat, right on top of his hat. It'll give it a little weight, but not too much. And hold that coin down. That'll be his little hat topper. Hold it down until that sets. Okay. And then I'll put the feather. Put the feather down there and angle it the way you want, quick, because it's going to set before you realize it. So there's his feather. And then I got to figure out, before I put the glue, where do I want the sword to go? I guess I'll do it like that, with the blade pointing back. That's safe. Alright, so lay that down and then hold this down in place. And that's it. He's done. You can add as much or as little as you like to him. If it's for yourself, then you might want to add some extra little special things to make him your own. But I just wanted to make something quick for an example, and he's pretty cute just like that. I like this one better, I think, than my first one because I like this sword. It's a special little touch on there. And I said I would show some of the other ones, so real quick, here's some of the other ones I did. Kind of more of a Christmassy one. But this one, again, I coated this in felt, gave him a white beard, and I needed something to stick on his hat, so I just quickly used some polymer clay, made a cookie. It was really easy to make. Actually, just kind of rolled it on some textured clay tool, stuck some little pieces of black in there for the chocolate chips, and used an actual cookie cutter to cut that. That's just some polymer clay. Made this in like probably 3 minutes and that's done. And so he's a fun one. Here's another one. This one's kind of a more natural looking one. I used kind of supposed to look like a garden gnome, I guess. Used moss for his beard and gave him a flower as his doodad. And this was a real short guy. His hat's real short too, but I like this one a lot. Here's another one. Here's that real heavy one I was talking about. This one took a while. I made the pieces and then in small sections, probably like 2-inch by 2-inch sections, would just kind of throw on some hot glue and then roll him through a pile of sequins. So you really can't even capture on a camera how shiny this guy is, but he's really cool. The thing is, he's heavy, and so he kind of tips over a little bit if you knock him too much. But his beard was white, and then I just used sidewalk chalk to sort of color the ends and give him that color on his beard there. And the other one I wanted to show was my Dumbledore, because you can do characters, of course, like the Jack Sparrow. So he's recognizable as a Dumbledore with his purple. He's got the little band across the top. I made some glasses out of just like some recyclable plastic. I glued it to a piece of a toothpick and then traced around with that same gold paint pen that I used on the sword. Of course, his beard gets a little knot in it, and then I thinned it out at the end by just kind of getting a little artsy with the scissors and trimming that up a little bit. And then this is made out of a toothpick and then little pieces of polymer clay. I just painted it. Again, this sounds like it took a while, but it only took a few minutes to make this thing. It's really roughly painted anyways. You can see I didn't really do a great job painting that. Put a little gem on his hat. But that is how you make a gnome.